premise of a celestial prelude is based on the simple fact that God would not ordain the long-awaited birth of his only begotten Son, the eternal purpose of the ages, without a little advance notice. The concept of this prelude is based on the Jupiter-Saturn triple conjunction of 7 to 6 BC that was not as close of a union of these planets as the one next week. Okay, so what he's talking about here is the 2020 Grand Conjunction, which was a closer union than the 7 to 6 BC sign, and that has very significant importance for us in our time, but we'll bring that up later. The triple union of 7 to 6 BC provided a basis for the Magi to recognize the triple conjunction of Jupiter and Regulus in 3 to 2 BC. Okay, so I want you to notice that the signs in 7 to 6 BC were followed up in the signs 3 to 2 BC, which is a 4-year difference. And we're seeing a triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn and a triple conjunction of Jupiter and Regulus 4 years apart, as the specific signs marking the birth of Christ. This prelude has two parts, the first general, the second specific. Confusion of these two separate parts of the celestial prelude has caused much uncertainty surrounding the star of Bethlehem. A good place to start thinking about the first part of this prelude is, where did the popular idea of a single bright star, obvious to all, marking Christ's birth, originate? The answer is found in what I refer to as the general sign of the celestial prelude that alerted the Magi to the broader period when the promised seed would appear. The first decan or subordinate sign of Virgo was originally called Coma. See in the blog header above as the L-shaped sign next to Virgo, meaning the desired or longed for, as in the book of Haggai. Haggai 2:7, and I will shake all nations, and the desired of all nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts. And in part 1, we already went over this information of the Deacon of Virgo Coma, and so we want you to go ahead and refer back to part 1 if you have not seen that yet. And then what we will do is bring this all together. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Jupiter-Saturn Great Conjunction triangle from Kepler and Kepler's information. Kepler mapped the progress of the grand conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn through the zodiac, described a series of equilateral triangles. Every 60 years a triangle is completed, and the conjunction returns to start, shifting, however, 9 degrees anti-clockwise in respect to its predecessors, thus generating a cycle of 800 years. And then in figure 3, and this part of the story, it actually calculates all of the grand conjunctions from 1901 to 2100, and I'm going to leave the link again so you can go and read about all of those grand conjunctions, and you can also read through all of the dates that are connected, and we already went through all this Halley's Comet information. And let's go ahead and just scroll down to the next piece of information that I wanted to bring out. that's all stuff that we will be coming up in the next video. And I think I'm back right. Here we go. Let's go ahead and start here. During the rule of Darius I the Mede, that the prophet Daniel presided over his court astronomers and Chaldeans, drawing on the rich astronomical tradition of the biblical patriarchs, not to mention the famous astronomical expertise of the Persian Magi. Daniel's potent influence convinced Darius to adopt the salient principles of biblical astronomy in the period circa 522 BC. Certain key aspects of Zoroastrianism agreed with the biblical standard practiced by the Hebrews, carried on by Daniel. The Magi would certainly have been familiar with Daniel's prophecy concerning the 70 weeks judged on Jerusalem relating to the coming Messiah. Daniel's influence had the added effect of preserving the astronomical truths of the promised seed, contained in the form of zodiacal narrative, which God put in the most capable hands of the time. And this is about the caravan of the Magi, and we're going to go ahead and go over this information. It's very important to understand the depth in which these Magi were trained on how to calculate all of these signs. His background on the Magi sheds light on the secular history of the blood moon lunar cycle going back as far as ancient Sumeria, because the Sumerian name for the great lunar eclipse cycle was also called the Saros. The word traced to the basic Babylonian unit of measure, also called a sar, revealed ancient elements of the sacred celestial rule of measure. This lunation consisted of 18 years, 11 days, or 10.96, was utilized by the Chaldean priests to predict eclipses. The Chaldeans also had a period of 3,600 years that was also called a Saros, which is 60 times 60. Again, we see the sesagesimal number pattern behind the heavenly order, including the cycle of the moon joining Saturn and Jupiter every 60 years in their celestial dance. Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions exhibit the essence of the base 60 number system as part of its function as a cornerstone of ancient cosmology, adding context to the celestial prelude, marking the birth of Christ. It also opens a window on the celestial mechanism framing the heavenly order called precession. Both of these gas giants frame the ancient solar system as its two outermost naked eye planets, as they open a window on the precession of the equinoxes. It also shows a unity between the inner and outer solar system planets, with Saturn 29.5-year orbit and the 29.5-day lunar cycle on a year-day basis. Saturn embodies half of the sexagesimal order of the solar system, formatted in the orbits of these two gas giants. On the other half, being Jupiter's near 12-year cycle, spending a year in each zodiacal sign, even as the Sun spends a month in each of the 12 signs. The solar half of the order is seen in a division of 60 by 12 and the lunar half of a division by 30, both multiples of 60. This aspect of the numerical order of the solar system exhibits its base 60 order was ultimately designed by the Creator according to the basis of the pi ratio. The Babylonian Sar is doubtlessly related to the Hebrew word of the same spelling meaning: prince, captain, chief, ruler, leader, or head, which is H Hebrew 8269. The word has retained this meaning even in the modern usage, as in the Tsar of all the Russias. It is used in Daniel 10:13 and 20, referring to the archangel Michael who dispatched the fallen angel Daimon, who opposed the messenger angel that God sent to answer Daniel's prayer. In Isaiah 9:6, one of the great prophecies of the promised seed, it is used of the Messiah as Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace, the one who brings peace to all creation. Kepler was also intrigued by the idea that there might be an affinity between this series of planetary unions. Keyed by the appearance of the 1603 supernova, it was important, however, that we notice that Kepler was not only the first I'm aware of to suggest a planetary conjunction scenario to explain the Star of Bethlehem, but he was also the first to connect a supernova with these unions and relate it to the Magi, what the Magi had seen. Taking a closer look at the 7 BC Jupiter-Saturn triple union involves attention to each conjunction, starting with the May 27th union. The first conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn shows the authority of the scepter of God's kingdom, resonant with Lucifer in his first estate as the angel of light in the first heavens and earth. He alone was set apart in his authority over the angels. Genesis 1:1. These truths of the first heaven and earth, where only the angels dwell, are symbolized in the first Jupiter-Saturn union of 7 BC. In the heavenly signs that followed, outside of the clearly marked 2-year period from September 15th, 7 BC to September 15th, 5 BC, the rest of these specific preliminary signs are found in Figure 1 chart. Its purpose is to mark the first estate of Lucifer as the original bright and morning star, second only to God as the creator. All right, we're going to let you go and read all of this. We're actually going to be coming back and doing an entire study on these signs associated in the heavens to break down these scriptures, because there is some ancient information that I believe a lot of the body of Messiah is missing, and we're gonna have to dig into that one in a separate video and bring that out with more clarity. So I'll leave the link again so you can go ahead and dig into that. But this whole section here is tied to the ancient signs and how that is tied to the biblical tale. This part here is also really, really good about the music of the spheres. And again, I'm going to let you go and read that information. This was also another very, very interesting part of the story. This goes into the geometry of all of these alignments and that's also a really important part of the study to dig into. It goes into more detail about all of the signs in Saturn, and then it also goes into here into the golden ratio, and how that is tied to all of these signs. It's really, really a deep part of the study, and like I said, we're going to come back and we're going to take this as a completely different study, specifically on the ancient perspective before the pole star changed from Draco to where it is today. And this part we're going to go ahead and go over really quick. This was very, very interesting to me. We're gonna add this in really quick. We'll just jump through it as quick as we can. The sacred symbolism of the tabernacle, reflecting the 7-day temporal order that man was to follow in fellowship with the Almighty, is formed on the lunar calendar, embodying the internal and external tabernacle measures. According to T. Paine, who first suggested an endwise union of either set of the tabernacle curtains, from Josephus forward depicts the internal tabernacle measurement as 12 cubit whites by 29.5 cubits long, versus the external measures of 12 and 1/3 cubits by 30 cubits. This represents an alternating lunar calendar of 29.5 and 30 lunar days in a month, a long-standing order in a 360-day calendar year. The 12-cubit measure shows the 12 months of the solar year, while the 29.5 cubits represents the lunar synodic month of 29.53 days, or 29 days, 12 hours, and 44 minutes, and 2.37 seconds. We see this also in the time between the two full or two new moons, as 29, 43, 81 days. For internal dimensions of the tabernacle curtains, the tabernacle's external measures of 12 1/3 cubits wide by 30 cubits long show 12.368 synodic months per year, or 12 and 7/19 by the 30 days of a solar month. As we have noted, key Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions are recognized in close relation to the precession of the equinoxes in the Hebrew cosmology seen in Genesis 1, 6-10, and the worldviews of ancient cultures including Sumeria, Babylon, Egypt, and the Mesoamericans. According to this pattern, Jupiter and Saturn triple conjunctions occur in Pisces only once every 800 years. This exhibits how this planetary conjunction series subdivides the precession, which totals a period of 25,920 years, because every 30 cycles of Jupiter and Saturn triple conjunctions in Pisces totals a period of 24,000 years, a time near to the full precession of the equinox, which is 25,920. They rounded up to 26,000, but it's actually 25,920, and there's even conjecture on that. But the Mayans had the closest, ability to calculate all these things. So, according to Peter Tompkins, Mayans also calculated the orbit of the Earth and the Sun as 365.2420 days, and marked the close of the year by the erection of a stone they called a tune. They did likewise for 20-year cycles, or katun, a period they considered governed by the conjecture or conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. Tompkins continued by saying that the Maya had a very special sacred year of 260 days called the Zolkin, that the Aztecs called Tonal Amalo. This 260-day sacred calendar was divided into 13 months of 20 days, and the multiples of 13 and 20 became the heart of the chronological computation, stunning in its simplicity and exactness. A greater cycle of 260 years was 13 consecutive Jupiter-Saturn conjunction cycles of 20 years. The greater 260-year cycle, based on the cycle of Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions, was also a tool anciently utilized by the Mayans to break down the very long cycle of the precession of the equinoxes. Tompkins states that the Maya also had a cycle of 942,890 days, or 2,582 years, that turned out to be 130 Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions. Twice this cycle, 5163 years, not only gave the equivalent of the greater 260-year cycle of Jupiter and Saturn unions, but 100 of these greater 260-year cycles was equal to the 26,000 years, often recognized as the length of the precession by the ancients. The tetrahedron or pyramid, the three-dimensional form of the two-dimensional triangle, which is the basis of Saturn-Jupiter cycles, is found below. Perhaps the highest compliment we can pay the Magi is that they were genuine believers who sought for and accurately anticipated the first coming of Jesus Christ, according to the true science of astronomy, and they applied for their own traditions of Zoroastrianism. As Matthew 2:10 states, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. The exceeding greatness of their joy, however, was not founded upon their sighting of his star only, but on both the general and specific signs of the celestial prelude, and all that Jupiter represented regarding the first coming of Jesus Christ, the promised seed written in the stars. Thus, we can also see a reason for their joy, because as Rolliston quoted Abulpharagius states, Zarathustra, or Zoroaster to the Greeks, taught the Persians that in the latter times a virgin should bring forth a son, and that when he should be born a star should appear, and should shine and be conspicuous in the midst of the figure of the virgin. And it is then said that he commanded his disciples, the Magi, when they should see the star, that they should go forth where it is directed them, and offer gifts to him that should be born. This confirms what we have already seen in the Zoroastrian writings concerning the coming of the promised seed. The Magi would certainly have been joyful, awestruck when they realized the dual witness of the supernova in coma, along with his star, the king planet Jupiter, at rest in Virgo's midsection on their way to Bethlehem, fulfilling their part of the prophecy written in the stars. The Magi truly desired the realization of the hope of all mankind as ambassadors for all Gentiles. The Magi came paying homage to the King of Kings who would rule all nations. The Heavenly Father showed his love and care for these early Gentile believers as he delivered them from the enemy's deceptive wrath manifesting in Herod by the phenomena of divine revelation. The Magi are thus appropriately emissaries for all believing Gentiles, as they were guided by God's hand to herald the revival of the accurate teachings of the celestial epistles. As the Creator, undeniable witness of nature to all the world, God has set aside myriad wondrous secrets in the stars for those with eyes to see and ears to hear and with hearts to discern the hidden depths of the mysteries viewed in spiritual retrospect. This also informs biblical prophecy of current events. It was the faith of the Magi that distinguished them in history, not only as consummate scientists, but also shining lights showing the way, the revelation of the promised Messiah for all people